Now, out of all the Nintendo games on the planet, there is one franchise that we see a lot at both big and small speedrunning events: The Legend of Zelda. Almost all of these games still have an active community, and especially the ones for the 3D titles are extremely big. However, which games are completed the fastest? Which games can be beaten in a matter of minutes? Well, let's find out. Obviously, we're talking about the any percent category. Here the goal is to beat the game as fast as possible after all. However, we won't go into real detail when it comes to the run, because that would just take ages. So if you want to know more about it, we will link videos in the upper right corner explaining some of the runs seen in this video.
Number 5. Now, to start off our beautiful list of special Zelda games, we are going to look at the very first one, a pure classic. This game came out as early as 1986 for the Famicom in Japan, and was later released in the Western world, including Europe and the US, in 1987. It has since then been re-released several times for the Nintendo GameCube, as well as the Game Boy Advance, but we are looking at the very first version. The current world record for this game is 27 minutes and 57 seconds by LackAttack24, who got this record about a year ago. Now, the overall route he used goes as followed. First up, level 3, which is the dungeon where you get the raft and then defeat the boss. Then on to the 4th level to, yet again, get the item, which is the ladder this time, and after that go on to the boss. The same happens to level 1 as soon as the previous one is done, but after this he will collect some specific items. The blue candle and recorder. The first one is just bought from an old man, while the other is obtained in level 5 and beaten right after. As soon as that's done, the runner goes back to level grinding, going to 2, 7, 6 and 8. All that matters is getting the boss and getting to the end of them. With a huge part of the game out of the way, he goes on to get the mighty silver arrows, which help him at the very end of the game. And as you would expect, he takes on Ganon as soon as he can in order to finish the game in almost exactly 27 minutes and 57 seconds. Number 4.
Alright, the last game was pretty old, but luckily enough, we're moving on to a more modern title, The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords for the Game Boy Advance. It was released as a package together with A Link to the Past, and was the first multiplayer Zelda game. So we have two runners this time, Le Grand Grand and Baffin. The game was completed by them in 20 minutes and 42 seconds about 2 years ago, which is quite a bit faster than our previous one, but that's also because the game is quite short. The runners go through 4 levels: Forest, Ice, Volcano, and Wind, so it's quite logical that it's shorter. This game is also in a set order, so the route is quite standard, and in the run itself there aren't any major tricks. It mostly comes down to working together, which is probably the hardest part of running this game even, since you need at least 2 people making timing and pacing a difficult task. But still, they managed to do it in an incredibly fast time, working together in order to take down Vaati.
Number 3. From the more modern 2000s, we are moving back to the olden days because Zelda 2 can also be beaten in a remarkably fast time. It was released in 1987 on the NES and Famicom and retains many of the features seen in the first, but also changes things. You travel across the world map, which would lead to enemy encounters, which took place on a side-scrolling field, rather than a top-down perspective that we saw in Zelda 1. So yeah, it's quite different. But still, simple dude managed to do it in 18 minutes and 2 seconds about 7 months ago. Now the run is kind of all over the place, going from villages to completely different portions of the map using quite complicated glitches. For example, Game Over Warp, which requires a combination of buttons, getting to glitch versions of certain towns in order to get to the other part of the map, and manipulating where you end up when leaving a screen to skip huge parts. This stuff is seen a ton throughout the run. However, like we already said, we aren't going to cover this in detail, because that would be just too much. Overall, the run is quite fast-paced, all over the place, and ends up focusing on a number of things. Mostly getting key items, powers, and some minimal leveling on the side, all in preparation of the final portion. And when he does reach the end, after getting stuff like the glove, hammer, and fairy ability, the run becomes especially weird, because the runner will use a lot of screen transition manipulation in order to work his way to Dark Link, and the end of the game in an incredibly fast time. Number 2.
We can already hear the complaints from the comment section. Where are all the big and well-known Zelda games? Well, most of them are quite slow and take an hour or more to complete, but there is one that's extremely fast thanks to one trick. The any percent of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the first ever 3D title which came out in the year 1998 for Nintendo 64. The current world record for this run is 17 minutes and 4 seconds by Toria, who got this time about 6 months ago. Now, the route of this run is extremely simple and only gets complicated around the halfway point. The runner starts out in Kokiri Forest, where he does the normal route any casual player would take. So waking up, getting the sword, going to the shield, talking to the Great Deku Tree, and entering his mouth to do the very first dungeon of the game. Here he does some minor tricks like precise jumps, clips, and more in order to get to the boss as fast as possible. He defeats the boss, dies, gets out of the dungeon, into the Lost Woods, catches bugs in a bottle, and goes back to the boss room. Here, a trick called ganondorf will help the runner a lot, because this is a wrong warp that brings him from the Great Deku Tree all the way to the end of the game. We have explained this trick in some other videos, so check the upper right corner for a detailed explanation. Using this, he ends up as Child Link in the cutscene of Ganondorf falling to the ground and the tower falling apart. After his escape, he will take on the Dark Lord himself, and uses a stick in combination with the Infinite Sword glitch to take it down extremely fast. All that's left to do after this is deal the final blow, and then the game is finished. All the runner did was the first dungeon and the final fight, skipping everything else.
Number 1. And so we arrive at our final Zelda game on this list, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, which is even getting a remake soon. However, we are looking at the DX version for the Game Boy Color released in 1998. Now, while the other games take minutes upon minutes to complete, this game can be finished in 2 minutes and 13 seconds. The route of this run is quite simple. Wake up, get the sword, enter the doghouse in a specific way, and work your way through the glitch world. Now, you might think, what is the glitch world? It sounds like some Matrix stuff. Well, while it does sound like fiction, it's 100% in the game, and is part of a glitch called arbitrary code execution. Now, this stuff is extremely complicated, and what it comes down to is that the runner manipulates the game's code using in-game inputs. So almost everything you see in this speedrun is done with a specific reason, and this also goes for all the movements and actions seen in the glitch world, because using this you can force the game to play the final cutscene, and so you can finish the game. We've also done more in-depth videos on this topic using Pokemon Red and Blue, so links to that will be in the upper right corner. So as you can see, some of these games can be beaten incredibly fast, and as time goes by, they will only become faster. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to click the annotations on the screen right now. Also, be sure to subscribe and click the bell button, because then you won't miss anything.